give you the synopsis of Fortuna Sworn, but she just really didn't deserve it. She had no rights, so we're moving past her. And so the very foundation of their relationship is just Lorenzo wanting to kill Morgan, and that from that I knew that the book was starting off at a 5 stars for me.
Let that wave crash over my head and pull me deeper. Let the water fill my lungs, make me stay forever young.
Welcome back to my channel, Jocelyn Reads. And for a lot of you guys, this will probably be your first welcome to my channel because I've gotten a huge influx in subscribers the past couple of weeks now. I think it will be 1 or 2 weeks since it happened, and by it I mean the death of George Floyd. I feel really weird sitting here and saying that the death of George Floyd led to people subscribing to my channel. So I spoke on the way that made me feel a little bit in the beginning of my weekly reading vlog that I'm filming currently, and today is Tuesday, so that should go up either Friday or Monday. I'm not sure which one I want to do. To speak on it a little bit here, I just want to say that I hope this isn't you subscribing to me just because I'm black and you want to have me as your token black booktuber to subscribe to. Hopefully you subscribe to me because you like me and you like my content and you want to get to know me basically. But thank you so much for everyone who has subscribed recently, and I just hope that you are doing it for the right reasons. That's all I'm gonna say for now. But I also want to speak on Black Lives Matter and the death of George Floyd. Just because things have calmed down on social media and it's not filling up your entire timeline right now, that doesn't mean that the fight is over. We are fighting a system. We are not just fighting for one man's justice. We are fighting a system that is oppressing black people. Down below in my description box, I will be putting links, petitions, everything that you can sign, where you can donate, anything like that. I'll be putting, maybe I'll link a few of my favorite black booktubers, but I hope that you will actually watch their videos before just going and subscribing to check a box and make yourself feel better for having a diverse sub box that you don't even actually watch their videos. What I'm going to be filming today is my May wrap up. I am going to be doing my wrap up a little bit differently because I just am not in the mood to be doing what I've been doing for my past 2 wrap-ups. So the first book that I read this month was Addicted to You, and that is by Krista Ritchie and Becca Ritchie. So Addicted to You is a new adult book that follows 2 addicts. One is a sex addict, the girl is a sex addict, and the guy is an alcoholic. And they have this fake relationship with each other in which they tell their parents that they're dating while they're away in college, so their parents aren't that worried about them. And though this is supposed to just be a pair of best friends fake dating, they end up catching feelings for each other or realizing that they have more feelings for each other than what they originally thought. And then it becomes a kind of toxic relationship of them kind of trying to work through their addictions together in order to be together in a healthy relationship, but not knowing how to do so since they are both addicts. And this story, I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars. I actually really enjoyed it. It seemed very realistic to me. I personally felt with what little knowledge I did have that the road to recovery was represented accurately in the sense that it wasn't just done within the first book and they weren't just immediately healed. Another part of the book that I ended up really enjoying was the relationship aspect. Obviously, I am a whore for romance. Even though there was a lot of toxic parts of their relationship because they were both addicts, they were never portrayed in a way that made it seem like it was okay that it was toxic. I feel like this book was really a lot more about them getting past those toxic behaviors and trying to be better for the other person as well as to be better for themselves. So that made the relationship seem very, it wasn't, I don't want to say healthy because it wasn't healthy, but that was kind of the entire point, which I ended up really enjoying. So after I finished with Addicted to You, I just went ahead and read the next book in the series, which is called Addicted for Now. To say the least, one of the characters ends up in rehab and the other one is kind of trying to live without them, and this is really hard for these 2 characters just because they did grow up as best friends and have always been dependent on each other, especially because of their addictions. So because of that, you are kind of watching these 2 characters, mostly the female character, I can't even remember her name, but you're mostly watching her come into herself without having the guy there as a crutch, also while them just having entered a relationship with one another. So it's really complicated. It has a lot more depth than a lot of the new adult books that I have read, but I ended up loving this one as well and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. The reason why I took away a star for both of the books was just because some parts seemed to drag for me, but overall I really did feel connected to the characters. I liked where the plot was going. The next 3 books that I read this month I actually did a video on, so I'm not going to talk too in depth about them. I'll link the video up above. This is where I read books that were similar to my favorite book of all time, which is Aceveda. The first book that I read for that series was Fortuna Sworn by KJ Sutton. Basically, I gave this 2 stars. It was giving me Wattpad realness and I wasn't really feeling it. The next book book that I read for that series was Radiance by Grace Draven, and I absolutely love this book. This book told me that friends to lovers have rights. I've always been an enemies to lovers stan, but Radiance made some points, let me tell you. I didn't even give you the synopsis of Fortuna Sworn, but she just really didn't deserve it. She had no rights, so we're moving past her. But basically Radiance is about Ildiko and Brishan, and they are both of different species. So Brishan is from the species that is very dark and very nocturnal. So he has this gray skin, he has like yellow eyes, and he has like these sharp teeth. He's more of like a monster-esque species, whereas Ildiko is pretty much a human. Okay, I'm sorry if the angle changed. I literally was sitting on my foot and it fell asleep and I couldn't sit like that anymore. So basically what I was saying is that Ildiko and Brishan have to get married in order to have a political alliance between their two kingdoms and their two species. Except they both found the other one hideous, and when they meet at the first time, they really just become friends and they kind of bond over the fact that the other one is ugly. So it's really funny, and the banter between them is just like A1, just because they hold no shots back. Like they're literally just going ham on each other about how they're both ugly, and it makes them become friends. And I kind of relate to that kind of humor. Not saying I like to be called ugly, but what I am saying is I like the type of banter with each other. And also because they became friends with being open and honest and genuine and not having any sort of attraction to each other, when they did ultimately get into a relationship, it was literally A1, because they fell in love with each other for who they were. Basically, it wasn't really a lot of lust pushing the relationship, so the relationship was really well developed because of that. All right, and so the last book that I read for that series was Bridge Kingdom by Danielle Jensen, who is also the author of Stolen Songbird, which I haven't read yet, but I'm really interested in it because I gave this one 5 out of 5 stars. I think I might say 4.5 on Goodreads, but at the end of the day, this is a 5-star read for me. And this book basically follows a girl named Laura, who is a princess, and a guy named Aaron, who is a king. And Laura is one of 12 sisters, including herself. So 1 of 11, 1 of math. I'm gonna move past that. She has 11 other sisters, and then there's 12 sisters in all, including her. And these sisters were basically raised in order to marry into this kingdom, the Bridge Kingdom that Aaron is the king of. And they are raised to basically be some type of spy. So the story starts off with Laura kind of tricking the entire kingdom to think that she killed her sisters in order for her to become queen. And that scene had me shook. So it starts off like that, and then she ends up marrying Aaron. So she kind of has this battle within herself to figure out if she wants to believe everything that she was taught when she was young and kind of screw over the Bridge Kingdom, or if she wants to start anew and just really fall into this life that she has with Aaron when she's there. And it is literally so good. Laura reminds me of kind of a Mia Corvera-esque character, if you have read Nevernight. If you like that Mia Corvera-esque character with a hopefully less problematic author. I don't know if Danielle Jensen is problematic. I haven't read anything about her. But if you like that type of character, you can get her right here in the Bridge Kingdom with a better romance, a better well-developed romance, all right here in this package. And while we're on the topic of problematic authors, the next book that I read was City of Glass by Cassandra Clare, and this book is the 3rd book in the Mortal Instruments series, but it follows the events after City of Ashes. And I ended up giving this book 3 stars. Honestly, couldn't even tell you what exactly happened in this one, just because they're all blending together in my head. Felt like it was a lot more well done than City of Ashes because it had a lot more of a plot, and everything pretty much got resolved in the way that I expected it to, but I wasn't really feeling connected that much with the characters. And Cassie Clare decided to use incest once again as a plot line. Not once in this series, but twice. No one told homegirl to do this twice, but she decided to do it anyway, and that's why I gave it 3 stars. I really feel like society has progressed past the need for fake incest plotlines, but that's just me. Next, I read Wicked Fox by Cat Chow, and I also did a reading vlog reading this, so if you want to see that, I'll link it up above. I was just basically fangirling about the main character in this book called Ji-hoon the entire time, because he is literally just everything that I love in a love interest. So I was just pretty much screaming about how adorable and annoying he was the entire time, but I mean, I had a good time. So this book basically follows a girl named Mi-young and a guy named Ji-hoon. And Mi-young, I think I'm saying their names right. Hopefully I'm pronouncing their names right. Mi-young, or Mi-young, she is a gumiho, and a gumiho is basically a 9-tailed fox. So she has the human form, and then she also has a fox form. And in order to survive, she basically has to eat the souls of men. So because she's half human, she has a little bit of a soft spot for humans, so she doesn't want to necessarily just be going out eating any man's soul. So she decides to just eat the souls of men who are bad, which, I mean, go ahead, sis. We need them gone anyway. So the story starts off with Mi-young moving to this new town, and she's kind of doing her business in the wood, eating man's soul and whatnot, as you do. And Ji-hoon kind of stumbles upon her, and he is being chased by this kind of demon. And Mi-young ends up saving him, and when she saves him, she coughs up this bead, and this bead is inside all gumihos, and it's kind of like their life source. So when she coughs it up, Ji-hoon touches it before she can get it back from him, and that kind of connects them in a way. So she starts dreaming, and he's in her dreams, and she's in his dreams, and they're just kind of connected in that way. And then she goes to a school the very next day, and who is there other than Ji-hoon? And so they're just kind of forced into each other's lives that way. And the whole story follows Mi-young trying to get this bead back into her body, as well as having this sort of relationship with Ji-hoon that becomes romantic. And it's literally the sweetest romance. Like, please, please, please read this book if you like romance. I mean, this book is not solely based on romance, and neither is it solely based on fantasy. I think this is a very good mix of both of them, but the romance is literally the cutest thing, just because Mi-young has distanced herself from people because she's a gumiho and she doesn't feel that connected to humans, and humans kind of don't really like her because gumihos are very attractive in order to kind of lure men in. And so because of that, she gets a lot of hate, and so she's very kind of closed off into herself. And Ji-hoon is the exact opposite, where he's very extroverted and he's just like the sweetest thing ever, but just like also very annoying. And so having that dynamic with these two characters literally gave me life. And so I ended up giving this 4 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read was also a really unique fantasy that I ended up enjoying, and that was Girls of Paper and Fire by Natasha. And I ended up giving this book 4 out of 5 stars. This book follows, I had a really good reading month. I'm just realizing this. I didn't even say any 2 stars yet. Interesting. So this book follows the story of a girl named Lay, and she's a part of the paper caste. And in this society, the paper caste is the lowest caste that you can be. And every year, 8 girls are chosen from this caste, and they are taken to the king, basically trained to be escorts in a way, like consorts, something around those types of things. Is that even how you say that word? I don't know. Y'all know what I mean. But yeah, they're basically trained to be that, and they're just there for the king's pleasure. They can be sexually assaulted, so there is a trigger warning for that. It says that there's triggers for violence and sexual assault, so if you are not able to read that, definitely wouldn't pick this up. But yeah, paper girls are basically there for the king's pleasure. He can literally do anything with them. And this book follows a girl named Lay, who obviously does not want to be a paper girl at all, and the whole time that she's in the kingdom trying to be a paper girl, she is trying to figure out a way to get out of it. And while there, she ends up falling in love with another paper girl, and it is the cutest thing ever. I don't like the aspect of paper girls because I didn't like them being sexually assaulted, obviously, but I really did like the way in which the author flushed out the idea of a paper girl, and the way in which the cast interacted within the society, and the way that paper girls are kind of instrumental to the society in the eyes of the king, but not really, just because he doesn't need that. I loved watching how Lay decided to rebel, and I loved watching the other paper girl who helps her rebel, and kind of them scheming and planning against the king. It all was done so well. There were so many parts in this that broke my heart. The violence in this is pretty graphic. There's a violent scene that involves an animal in like the first maybe 50 pages, and that literally had me cry. The next book that I read was by Miss Problematic herself, Cassandra Clare, and that was City of Fallen Angels, and I gave this book 2 out of 5 stars. So this book really felt like a filler book, which is kind of weird just because it was technically the first book in the new series. So Miss Cassie Clare definitely could have given us a little bit more than what she did, but that did not happen. So this book is basically following a lot of Simon, who was not my favorite character. He definitely was redeemed a bit at the end of City of Glass, but he's not my favorite character. So following him so much in this book wasn't the most enjoyable experiences just for me, and I also felt a lot of the book could have been taken out. Like I said, it was pretty much filler, so I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. You guys are probably wondering, like, girl, why are you reading these books? But if you really want to know why I was doing this, it was because I wanted to read the entirety of The Infernal Devices, which I did and I really liked, but I wanted to read those, and then I wanted to read these, The Mortal Instruments, just so I could get to The Dark Artifices, just so I could buy Chain of Gold, just because I love the cover. I'm not really taking comments or concerns at this time, but thank you for that. So the next book that I read this month was The City of Brass by S.A. Chakrabarty, and this was actually a reread for me because I wanted to read the next book in the series. I read this book also last summer, but I just love this book so much. So this book follows a girl named Nari. She's finessing people because she has this skill in which she can sense when someone is kind of sick, and so she knows how to fix them in a way. So she uses those skills in order to finesse and kind of get more money off of people who aren't really sick. But one day, while she's in the middle of a finesse, she ends up conjuring up this djinn, and she's shook. The djinn kind of tells her she's not who she thinks she is. She's not just a human, obviously, because she can heal people, and he tells her that there's this whole other side of the world that she doesn't know about, that she is a part of. And so they go on this journey together to take her to Daevabad, which is basically where she is really from. They're some of my favorite characters in the entire world, especially Dara. And Ollie's okay. He's not my favorite. I really feel like he's kind of weak. There's this kind of oppressive system that is working in their society, and his dad is all of that. And though he doesn't completely agree with his dad, he doesn't necessarily stand up in ways that I feel are substantial, and so I don't really like Ollie in that way, but I love Dara just because he is himself to the entire core. Like, nobody is going to stop Dara from being Dara, and he is so funny, he's so witty. I love the history and the depth and the culture that is in this book. The next book that I read was Menace by J.M. Darhauer. This book is another new adult book, and it follows our characters Lorenzo and Morgan, and let me tell you right off the bat, Lorenzo is a psychopath, but he's my psychopath. So basically Lorenzo is a part of a mafia, pretty much. That's the only way I can explain it, and he's pretty much the head. And then Morgan is kind of this character who we don't know much about. She's pretty much a mystery. So they meet with Morgan trying to pickpocket Lorenzo. Like, sis, I don't even know what she was doing, but I guess she thought she could pickpocket him. Figures it out right away, and he kind of chases her down the street and gets his wallet back, and from there he's just kind of obsessed with her just because she is the only person who kind of has challenged him in that way, especially as a woman. And so the very foundation of their relationship is just Lorenzo wanting to kill Morgan, and that from that I knew that the book was starting off at a 5 stars for me. Anyway, they have this really volatile relationship between the two, but it's just so good. Like, I sound crazy explaining this book, but it's just so good. So anyway, the next book that I read was Grievous. So it's the second book in this duology, and it obviously follows the events after Menace, and I ended up giving this one 4 out of 5 stars. It wasn't my favorite between the two just because what I realized I really like in new adult is the characters getting together. So usually the second book in the series is always going to be a little bit less liked by me, but I really did enjoy watching Lorenzo and Morgan push through the next obstacles in their relationship. I just really loved Lorenzo, so this book wasn't going to get less than 4 stars from me just because Lorenzo was in it. So the next book that I read was by the same exact author, and it was called Monster in Her Eyes. I just became obsessed with this author and their work, so I decided to read this book as well. And this book follows a girl who is in college, and she ends up some way running into this kind of same type of mafia guy type character, but she runs into him at this party and he ends up taking her home because she's really sick, and he kind of takes care of her, and then that kind of started this relationship between the two. I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars because I really liked the chemistry between each other, but this one was a lot more problematic than Menace, so now that I'm thinking about it, probably more of a 3 star. Next book I read was the second book in that series, and that was Torture in Her Soul, and this one I gave 2 out of 5 stars. This man just became completely too problematic for even me, and y'all saw how I was talking about Lorenzo. He just was way too problematic, and I couldn't see how they could be in a relationship with one another. It just wasn't making sense, and the way that he behaved was just not healthy at all. Like, I look like a hypocrite, I look like a whole clown sitting here saying that just because of the books that I've been talking about, but here this was just like a hard no for me. I can get behind some dark romance, but this man, he took it too far. It was too far for even me. The next book that I read was also new adult, and it was called Jacro by Sarah Nay. But I ended up giving this book 4 out of 5 stars, and I really liked it. So this book follows a girl named Scarlett and Rowdy, and it is a college romance, which I really love college romances, probably because I'm in college. It makes sense. And so the girl named Scarlett starts off with going to this party, and while she's at this party with these friends, she's kind of portrayed as the not like other girls character, which I don't love, but the way in which this was portrayed in this book, which is a lot better than what I have seen in the past. And so while her friends are kind of flirting, Scarlett is kind of coming off as a cock block, to be frank, and so she ends up getting kicked out the party, and the guy who has to kick her out the party is named Rowdy, and he ends up sitting on the porch with her and talking to her because she doesn't necessarily want to go home. And so it kind of becomes a pattern because her friends want to keep going back to this place that's called Jock Row, which is basically just a line of houses with a whole bunch of jocks in them, which so somewhere that I never really would want to go, but her friends want to keep going back there, and so Scarlett goes back with them, and each time Rowdy is there at the door telling her that she can't come in because she's a cock block, and so they end up spending like every Friday night together out there on that porch. And you guys know, I know you guys can hear by that description that is freaking fire. The chemistry between these characters is unmatched. I am telling you, from the very first Friday that they are there on that porch, I was rooting for their relationship. So the next book that I read was the second book in the series, and it was called Jock Rule, and it followed the characters Kip and Teddy, and I ended up giving this one 3 out of 5 stars. And so Teddy goes through the same type of things. She goes to this party. This is probably why I didn't like it as much, just because it's a similar plot, and I like the characters of the other one more, so that one kind of just took the cake. So Kip is this character that's called Sasquatch. He has this huge beard, he has this long hair that he puts up in a man bun, and he's just very unapproachable. And so while he's at these parties, he's kind of just sitting against the wall and not really getting approached, and Teddy is the one who's getting left by herself by her friends, and she's kind of just standing in the middle of the party each time, and he's watching her like her friends are trash basically, and just kind of keeping an eye on her and just looking at her like this bitch is awkward basically. So one time he ends up approaching her and just being like, girl, why are you in the middle of the party each night just standing here looking silly? Like, it's not making sense to me. And so it becomes this sort of relationship where he's like, first of all, your friends are trash, you need to get better friends, so I'm gonna teach you about that, and then I'm also going to show you how to get a guy in a way. But even though that's how the story starts off, it really doesn't go down that road. I don't really like that type of trope, so if you don't like that trope, I wouldn't say don't read this book because of that, because it doesn't really go down that road the entire time. And the very last book that I read this month was actually my favorite book of the month, and I gave this one 5 out of 5 stars, and it was The Poet X by Elizabeth Aceveda. Look at all the awards on this book. It absolutely deserves it. This is the best book that I've read this month. It might be the best book that I've read this year. This book is a contemporary book that is written in verse, and it pretty much just follows a high school girl named Zamora, and Zamora is Afro-Latinx, I'm pretty sure, and she has this really curvy body, and ever since she's been growing up, she's kind of been targeted because of her body by older men, by people who are of her age, by her mother who has been calling her fast and things like that. I don't really know how to explain fast. If you don't know what fast means, it kind of just means like over sexual. So she's like pretty much over sexualized because of her body, because of how curvy she is, even though she is pretty young still. It's just so hard hitting. So it just follows Zamora's story there, and the way that she wants to be a poet and her kind of struggle with being that because of her relationship with her mom, who really doesn't want her to do anything but be in church. I just felt so seen by this book. Like, I've also been pretty curvy. I've been a curvy girl since I was pretty like, I don't know, pretty like middle school. Since the beginning of middle school, like I kind of have always had curves, and so I definitely felt Zamora's pain when she speaks on just like being looked at differently because of how your body is. Even though you are young still, your body might not look it in the way in which you are treated because of that. I definitely identified with her in that aspect, and I thought that Elizabeth Aceveda wrote that part so well for me to connect with her that well. I used to say that Star was the first time I saw myself in a book, but I really feel like I see myself more in Zamora. So this just meant a lot to me, like had me sobbing at some parts, and I didn't think it would because I don't like poetry. I didn't think I would be able to read a book in verse, and I didn't technically. I listened to the audiobook, so if you feel uncomfortable about reading a book in verse, I definitely would read this along with the audiobook, because Elizabeth Acevedo, she knows what she's doing. She reads it in the way that she wants it to be read. So 5 out of 5 stars, definitely would recommend, especially if you're a girl who looks like me. So before you like, comment, subscribe, and all those things down below, I would want you to put a butterfly emoji if you watch this completely to the end. So I think this is what I'm going to start doing with my videos. I'm going to start putting a different emoji at the end of each one. Shout out to Mayana for that. So put a butterfly emoji down below if you watch the entire video. Like, comment, subscribe, and all those things down below, and I'll see you guys in my next video.